Yes.
This man, they sent a maintenance team to get that Aerope helicopter repaired, which had been done. And this guy was a test pilot, so he was in Gangtok to test the other aircraft whether it's okay or not. When the message arrived there, now even the message, my post could not contact them, but near our post, the post was at 17,400, about 17,800, just below the ridge line. We had an intelligence bureau post. Now they have high performance wireless sets, which can connect right up to Delhi if necessary. So he was requested that you please send a message for the rescue of the general and the three other gentlemen. And so he managed to send this to the Gangtok headquarters at the helipad. And this was received pronto by this Air Force wing commander who was there. And he decided to do the rescue and take the Aerope helicopter with him. So two helicopters were sent off. They took about 40 minutes to come. So now the time was approaching 12 o'clock. It's about 11:35, 11:45. And I was wondering whether they'd be able to get through. But he got through the Tista Valley, came over our post, then went forward to where the crash site was, because he had been told on the radio where the crash site was, to circuit around that to have a look at it and take photographs. Then he came and landed at our Assam Rifles post at 17,400. Now, when the helicopter lands, they don't switch off the engine, because if you switch off the engine, you may not be able to start it. So the engine is running, rotors are moving around, and they didn't get out of the helicopter because they're not acclimatized. So the cockpit is pressurized. So they sent word that both the helicopters landed. So the please sit on. So I told the two Air Force pilots to go into the Aerope chopper. And my ADC and I got into this man's. It was a cheetah aircraft. That means it's the same model but a lighter aircraft. It only takes 4 passengers. So my ADC and myself sat at the back, and the two pilots were in front. And then we took off from there. Now, meanwhile, Donkela Pass was completely covered by clouds, so you couldn't go there. So we traced the Tisa Valley westwards, came to the spot where it cuts into the high mountains and goes south into Sikkim. We went hardly 3 feet above the valley, with big rocks inside the Tisa River Valley. It's not very big at that time, maybe about 10 yards across, but full of rocks and gushing water. He couldn't get underneath it because the clouds had come right up to the level of the water. So he started gaining height slowly, completely blanked out with cloud. So of course I said to myself that, well, maybe this is it. When it's time to go, it's time to go. You can't do anything about it. But the pilot was very good. He kept him going up and down, up and down, up and down. Go about 30, 40 yards one way, turn around, come back 30, 40 yards, then go around. He's doing that, gaining height. So I asked him, what are you doing? He said, if you look out of your window, the sunlight is shining on the water of the Tista, and that reflection is visible through the clouds. So through the cloud, you could see the strip of shining white going from north to south, right? The strip couldn't be more than about 30 yards long. So he was flying along it backwards and forwards, gaining height. See? He broke cloud at about 18,000 feet and 18,500, in fact. He broke the cloud. But what happened was there was just a break in the cloud. There was a cloud above us and a cloud below us. Now, by the way, I don't know if you've experienced this. If you're in a helicopter, absolutely white all around, you don't even know whether you're flying upside down or whether you're flying straight side up or whether you're flying sideways. There's no reference point for your mind to understand as to what the scene is. Anyway, he broke the cloud and then he did a turn all around to look around, and we suddenly saw the huge, massive sides of the Kanchenjunga mountain. Kanchenjunga mountain, as you say, as I told you earlier, is the third highest in the world. Its height is above 28,000 feet. It's just short of 29,000 feet. And huge, massive slopes could be seen in this break between the clouds. This break could not be more than 100 feet. Between the cloud on top, cloud below was thick cloud. And he saw this. He said, that's Kanchenjunga. Now he took the bearing to that, and exactly 90 degrees west, Kanchenjunga was on the west. He turned south and flew along this gap. And within maybe 45 minutes, we broke into clear sunlight and blue skies and merrily made our back to Gangtok. So Shruti was in the airport because, she'd known I'd gone on recce. I should have been back. I had taken off at about 8 in the morning, and I should have been back by about 9:30 or 10. So she, meanwhile, had gone to the helipad area. There's Army Service Corps Battalion headquarters there. Very good friend of ours was commanding there. And he said that while the general's on his recce, why don't you come and play canasta with the ladies? So she was playing canasta at the helipad. I mean, they've got a sort of an officer's mess there on one side, upstairs and downstairs. So they were upstairs. And they got a little worried that this, especially when they received the message that there's been a crash. Nonetheless, by about 2:30, we were back. And I was told that, the ladies are waiting for you up there. I walked up there. My trouser was torn on the right side from the hip to the toe at this crash. So Srupi says, you're not very well dressed for your reconnaissance, are you? I said, no, part of life. And that was it. Now, this is the third near-death experience that I've had in my career. The first one was in the 65 war, when I had explained to you earlier in the series, when I had gone to see the Pakistan 1 Armored Div attacking Khem Karan, and I was on my way to the 2nd Independent Armored Brigade, which is located at Asal Uttar. And when I went there, we got into heavy bombing and strafing by the Pakistan Air Force, etc., and artillery fire. That's the first near-death experience. The second, I had explained to you when I was the brigade commander in the desert, the 4 Armored Brigade, and I'd gone on exercise on the desert, and my jeep turned upside down. It's not a jeep; it's a heavy vehicle. It's the weapon carrier that we used to have, and it turned upside down into a newly cut brickland area, and we were saved by the skin of our teeth. And this was the third. So Mike Balla, who's a Sardarji with no beard, he took out the photograph of Guru Nanak. He said, so thanks to him, we are safe. I said, please send him my compliments also and our good wishes. Keep looking after us. What do you think of near-death experiences? I must tell you that the first thought came that you were ready to go, but you didn't. Maybe you have been saved by Kudrat or fate, whatever you call it, for doing more work in this world of ours. That work has to be good work, not bad work. That work has to be for service, not to yourself, but to others, right? Indian Military Academy, in those days when I went in 1948, had a crest. It said service before self. I explained to you also about earlier in the series when I spoke of the Prince of Wales's feathers, which belonged to my school, the RINC, and it belonged to the Prince of Wales of England. And this was the Black Prince. In the days of the wars against France, I think about the year of 13 or 1400, where he defeated the King of Bohemia on the field and captured his standard, which was the 3 ostrich feathers, on which is written Ich dien in German. Ich dien means I serve. That means a king or a leader has to serve. Doesn't have to serve himself, he has to serve others. So maybe that was the reason. Many thoughts come in your mind. I think I asked my EDC what thought did he have. He said, well, I'll go to the Buddhist Gompa in Gangtok to give my thanks to the Buddhist Lord, because obviously he's the boss as far as this area of the world is concerned. We were on the Tibetan plateau. Anyway, that's the story of my helicopter crash. Now, more aspects we can cover for the rest of the time. The question is, about the my ADC. And now, when you are in high altitude, I had taken my headquarters for this operation alert to a height of about 11,000 feet or 10,500, 11,000, just in the high altitude area where I had my div a small amount of the div headquarters, tactical group. Very cold at night. You have to learn how to sleep with your head up. You can't sleep flat, otherwise you can't breathe. You have to do, and we were acclimatizing ourselves. And then working at 12,000 plus or even up to 14,000 feet every day. And we spent 2 months. So in the evening, my ADC used to come and escort me from my bunker or hut, as you called it, to what we had in officers' mess to get together because you have food together and discuss with your other officers as to what they've seen and heard and what is the plan for the next day. So while he was walking me down, he said, "Sir, I've got a problem." I said, "What's your problem?" He says, "I'm in love with a Sikkimese girl." I said, "So what's the problem?" Now this lady, her name is Shring Yatso. Shring Yatso. Now Shring is her name, and since she's the elder sister out of three, she's called Aini. That means elder sister. She's very fond of Nandita. So since I was commanding the division, Surupi was there with me with Nandita and Lotika. Vikram, my son, was doing his medical studies, though he also came up for some time. And Nandita makes friends very quickly, so she'd been strolling around in Gangtok street. And she met these two, three girls laughing and joking, and she joined them and asked them to show her around, and they became friends. And these are the Gyatso sisters. And then Shireen started coming to my house very often because she was very friendly with Nandita. And Nandita used to go to their house very often. Her father had been the ADC to the present Chogyal's father. Now he was retired. The old Chogyal was no more, and the present Chogyal had his throne stolen away from him, and he was a Mr. P.T. Namgyal. But nonetheless, they knew each other very well, and present Chogyal was, every time he had a party in his palace, especially on important religious days, this Sonam Gyatso, the father, was always invited, and so the Chogyal knew this family very well. The wife of Sonam Gyatso, the father of this girl, was called Amla, Amla's mother. Now, she was a powerful woman because she owned all the property. She owned the riches and the family. The house belonged to her, main wealth belonged to her. Her husband had served the previous Shogyal, but he was on a salary, and this lady had property, so she was very well off, and so she ruled the roost and gave orders to everybody. And one of her orders was that none of my girls will ever get married because she wants to keep the property together. If a girl gets married, then the property might have to be divided. So my ADC explained to me that Amla, the mother, is not very happy with this little interest because my ADC will come to my house very often. This girl was there since she was Nandita's friend. So he says, I've fallen in love. I said, is it reciprocated? He said, yes. So he said, can you help me? I said, why do you want help? He said, because her mother, I asked the mother, I said, am I permitted to ask for the hand of your daughter? And the mother said, you can't do that. You're my son. You've been visiting the house every day and you're like my son, and therefore you're a brother to the lady. And brothers don't marry sisters. Too bad. So no matter how he explained that I'm not really a brother, not by blood. She said, no, as far as I'm concerned, you are part of the household. You've been coming here every day for so many months, and you can't marry your sister. So I said, all right, we'll see about it. And when we finished the high altitude work, we came down to Gangtok, and Ring was there in my house. So I asked her, Ring, you know Mike? She said, yes, sir. I said, he says he wants to marry you. He said, I know, sir. I said, what is your view on the subject? So she just looked up. I said, are you happy with this man and you want to get married to him? She said, yes, sir. They're very polite. They say, sir, first. I said, what about your mother? She said, no, mother doesn't agree. So then I asked her, I said, are you going to obey your mother? How are you going to obey your instincts? He said, I don't know, sir. All right. So then Chogyal was having a party in his house for some religious day, and I was invited with Ruby. So I went over there, and I was talking to Mr. P.T. Namgyal. I said, look here, Mr. P.T. Namgyal, my ADC is in love with Sonam Gyatso's daughter, Shireen. He said, oh, General, that's very good. I'm very happy to hear it. I said, I think the lady is willing. So is the boy, but the mother has said a big no, and since she controls everybody and the finances, what do we do about that? So he said, just a minute. He told one of the chaps to call Sonam Gyatso, who was his father's ADC, who came running. He said, Sonam, have you heard what the general is saying? He said, no, sir. So I said, he said, general is saying that his ADC wants to marry your daughter. What's your view? He said, sir, my view does not count because Amla is the ruler of the house. It's only her view that counts. He said, all right, you go away. He went away. So I asked the Chogyal, what's the answer to this? So Chogyal said, in Sikkimese tradition, if the parents don't agree to a wedding, then the boy and girl have to run away and get married. Hello. I said, thank you. So I went back home, and it was, I think, Friday evening. I told Mike, coming Sunday, that's 2 days hence, you're allowed to take my Jeep down the hill to the Siliguri railway station. You start from here at 4 in the morning. So you catch the 6:30, 7 o'clock train to Shillong. Shillong is in Meghalaya. And you tell Shireen that she will be out standing outside her house at 4 o'clock in the morning. You will put her on board this Jeep. You will drive to Jalpaiguri or Siliguri station. You will get into this train and you will take her to Shillong. In Shillong, there was an Air Force station. I said, in the Air Force station, his elder brother. I knew his elder brother. I knew two of his elder brothers. This is the elder brother was in the Air Force, the squadron lead in the Air Force, posted in Shillong. So I said, you will go to your elder brother's house. I'll give you 2 days. You will take the lady to an Arya Samaj Mandir, arranged by your elder brother, and you will get married to her. And on the third day, you will return to Gangtok. So that is the plan, and it was executed. So this happened on Sunday. By about Thursday or Friday next week, the married couple were back. And now, meanwhile, I arranged a big reception, not only in my house, but in the Black Cat Institute. Black Cat is the formation sign, and there's an institute, which is like a club. Very nicely, well attended. Invited a lot of big shots and their wives for a reception in my house also. And I had spoken to Mike Bhalla's father in Chandigarh. I told you I knew one of his brothers who was serving under me there when he was a BGS of the 2 Corps. And now I had also met the father. He was the principal of a school in Dagshire, which is in the Kasauli Hills. Yes, an hour is on one side, and Dagshire, the school, it's a military school, I think. And he was the principal. He's very good. I've inspected that school. I spoke to him. I said, what would you say if I told you that I'm going to get your son, Mike Bhalla, married off? He said, General, he's 29 years old. We've been after him for the last 4 or 5 years to get married. There's some lovely Sikh girls he's been introduced to who he says no to everybody. So if you can get him married, I'll be very thrilled. Actually, she's going to marry a Buddhist Sikkimese girl. She says, I'm not interested as long as it's a girl. It's all right. You can marry her. It'll be a great advantage to the family. You want grandchildren? I said, what about your wife? He says, she will be in agreement with what I say. I said, then will you come for this reception? You catch a plane like this, like this, like this, and I'll have a car waiting for you at the airport in Siliguri to bring you up to Gangtok. You shall be my guest. So he said, all right. So he came with his wife. So he was also there. And we had a reception for Mike Bhalla and his new bride. Now in my house, I found in my bedroom, while the party was going on, everybody having a hell of a laugh, music and band were playing and big party going on. People were having their drinks and their snacks, etc. The big lunch later on. I found a lot of shouting going on in my bedroom. So I walked into my bedroom and there was Amla sitting on my bed and shouting at this Mike Balla who was standing to attention in front of her. And she was shouting, "How dare you? How have you gone and married your sister without my permission?" And Mike was saying, "Amla, please, now that we are married, too late. And why don't you give us your blessing?" He said, "No, I don't accept this." I heard this shouting. The moment I came in, she had a lot of respect for me. She stopped talking. She said, "जनरल साहब, आपने बहुत गलती किया, हमारे बच्ची का शादी करा." I said, "Amla, खुश हो जाओ, start smiling, laugh. Marriage is always a happy occasion, not a crying occasion. If you don't do this, you've got two other sisters, very lovely sisters. There was Baby Law and there was another girl, very good-looking girls. I said, all my young officers are eyeing them. I get them other two married also. If you don't obey my orders." No, please, don't do anything more. All right, I'll accept this, but don't take my other two daughters away. I said, all right. So the marriage was performed and Amla was brought on board. And she said, "ये एक साल के बाद लड़की को फेंक देगा." Then she'll come running back. I said, "If he does that, I'll thank him from the army. Not to worry about that. He's under orders." He's still there, Mike Balla. He retired as a brigadier. He settled there with his wife. He's got two sons, and all is well. That's the story of my ADC. Uh, the another point I have for you is the Rumtek Monastery. In the Rumtek Monastery, when I used to go and visit the Karmapa Lama, became very good friend. He asked me to call in a palatial building next door to his own compound, his own monastery. They are very well appointed, by the way. Beautiful carpets and things like that. He said the grandmother of the King of Bhutan is a patient. So, General, I'd like you to call on her. I said, fine. So Srupi and I went and called on the lady. She must have been about plus of 80. And she was paralyzed. Paralysis in Bhutan, I'm told, is a disease which comes to the royalty and to those who are very, very poor. People in between don't get it. So it's just one of those things. And not all the royalty, but some member of the royalty, of the King of Bhutan, gets this paralysis disease. So she was the grandmother and she got this paralysis. So when I spoke to her, she said that this paralysis, she's been all over the world. She's been to America, she's been to Germany, she's been to France, she's been to Russia for treatment. All of them had failed. Then she went to Tibet and got Chinese treatment, that Chinese needle therapy. He said that didn't help. So I have decided that I have to die with this paralysis. So I've come to Rumtek Monastery to pass my last few days here. And she can't move. So her legs were paralyzed and all that. Arms were all right, but legs were paralyzed. So my predecessor, Major General Baman Rani, had ordered the medical specialist of our army hospital in Gangtok to attend to this lady, to keep her out of pain if possible. So that doctor had checked her medically and said there's no cure. This is a disease which can't be cured. But what I'll do is I'll send my masseur, chap who massages. In the hospital, you have the chap was a Naik, a two-striper, who was a master massager. So this is physiotherapy. So he had sent this man permanently attached to the lady's household. He told this man that you treat this lady as your own mother, you will massage her 3 times a day, her legs and her torso with certain oils that had been given. You do that 3 times a day and carry on doing that, and let's see what happens. Now, he'd been massaging her for the last maybe 6 months, and she was able to move her toes, after this massaging. So people thought that there is some chance. And I met her. She's a very humble lady, at the same time very powerful. She said that I'm very grateful to the army for this man comes like my son. He's massaging me every day. And why don't you make him an officer? So I said, I'm sorry, I can't. She said, you're a general in the army. You mean to say you're so powerless that you can't make the chap officer? I said, no, we have a procedure. We are not the king or somebody. We just order somebody to be an officer, so he becomes an officer. He has to pass certain tests and pass certain examinations and a selection board. And then if he's selected, he will go to the Indian Military Academy and he'll become an officer. But this chap had tried 3 times and failed. So I said, no chance. He said, all right, whatever you can do, please good. So we got him another strike. He became a officer. Anyway, she used to give him a lot of money and a lot of presents. I must tell you the sequence to this story. This lady became fit. She started walking some years later. And she went back to Bhutan. That story I'll tell you when I became the army chief and I visited Bhutan. I had the pleasure of meeting her again. And this time she could walk and talk and do all that sort of thing. So that's the story of the grandmother of Bhutan. That was my connection with the Bhutan royal family is through her. Anyway, another thing I'll tell you about the Karmapa is that while I was talking with him and having his highly salted tea with yak butter in it, with Rupi and the children, he had a number of, little colored strings made of silk. They're about 10 inches long. What he does is, he takes 3 or 4 of these colors, the various colors, and he knits them together like the plait of a woman. When we finished, he gave one to my wife, one to my son who happened to be visiting, one to Nandita and one to Lotika, and one to me. All of these were of different color. So we asked him, what is this you've given us? He said, this is what I see as your aura. A human being has got an aura around him. And he said, when I see the human being, I see the aura and the colors of this aura. And I made this accordingly and I presented it. I asked, what are we supposed to do with this? He said, keep it. It'll bring you good luck. Don't keep it in leather. Keep it in any other container which is cloth or something like that, but not in leather. It has some good effect for you and your children and your wife. Of course, I've lost mine long ago, and I don't know if my children still have it, because many years have passed. But he did talk about an aura. I said, before we part company, I want to know, is it a good aura or a bad aura? He said, no, the aura is good. If you can straight away see from a human being, instinctively, whether that human being is a good-natured person or a bad-natured person. It's instinctive. You see, the aura shows it for those of us who can see the aura. The medical specialist arrived because Karmapa had to get an injection. And while we were talking, he bared his arm, and the doctor was trying to push the needle into his arm, it wouldn't go in. That I saw myself. It wouldn't go in. He said, Your Holiness, my needle is not going in. So I'm sorry. I'll have to take my raksha off. He had a thick mala, garland of the Rudra or whatever you call those beads. He took it off. He said, now do it. And then the needle went in. Some of the things I want to take. I happened to take Surupi away for about 3 weeks from Gangtok because we had to go to Secunderabad for a study of major generals and above, Army, Navy, Air Force, on certain aspects of administration and logistics in Secunderabad Institute of Logistics, run by the military. And in my absence, the Karmapa passed away. I was told by the governor, that the governor was a man called Homi Talyar Khan. He's a politician from Bombay, a Parsi gentleman. He and his wife became very good friends. And he had been our ambassador in Libya. He told me many stories about Libya and the famous Libyan leader called Gaddafi, who, as you know, was murdered when the Americans and the British and the French attacked with warplanes. And because Libya was a very rich country, it's an oil country. There was no poverty over there. But by the time the Western world had finished with him, why? Because they blamed him for being a dictator for 35 years. He was the senior most dictator for 35 years in the whole of Africa. He was one of the top leaders of Africa, Muhammad Gaddafi. Anyway, that's the way the wind blows. And in those rioting and things, he was killed most horribly. Since when Libya has been in a very miserable condition by internal warfare and fights and things like that. That's why they're all leaving the land and trying to cross the Mediterranean to go to the sunny lands of Italy or Germany or France or something as refugees. Okay, anyway, he was the ambassador there. He told me a lot of stories about Gaddafi, the way he ran his country, and the way his wife and others. For example, his wife told me her name is Triti. She said that when she went there, the Zenana, the women are separate in the party and the men are separate. So the men go to a separate hall and the women all with burqas and abayas and all that covered of the face enter. Of course, she had only been advised by the foreign ministry that as a woman in Libya, keep her arms covered by long sleeve dresses and dresses right up to the ankle, so that too much skin is not shown because that's not accepted in these worlds. Anyway, she went there and these ladies would remove their burqas and their bayas, and she said the greatest fashions of Paris were visible amongst the ladies. Mini skirts, high heels, beautiful jewelry, the great latest scents from Paris. When all the women were present, they were very, very up class and with the latest fashions of Paris. So Triti and Homi Taryar Khan was the governor, very good friends. Used to come to my cinema hall for watching movies because we had movies. Now, one of the things that we did was that there was a chap called Bull Kamar. I don't know if you've heard this name. He's a Colonel Kamar of the 4th Command. It's my brother's battalion. He's a great mountaineer. He is an Everester, and he led an expedition to climb Kanchenjunga, a successful expedition. In climbing Kanchenjunga, because Kanchenjunga peak is considered a god in Sikkim, the orders of the Sikkimese people is that you can climb the mountain, but you can't set foot right on top of the peak. You can come up to the peak, plant your flags there, but you cannot put a foot right on top of the peak because that's God. So they managed to do that. You get a lot of support from my division, the 19th division, because if there's any medical problem or evacuation problem, then we use helicopters and things to do rescue. So he came to Gangtok to meet me, and he offered to speak to my officers and men on the business of mountaineering and how they did the Kanchenjunga climb. So I said, all right, we've got a large cinema hall. Why don't you come there? And there's some tourists and all that. We'll send the word to the various hotels that the tourists can join us. He said, yes, whatever you do, I want the hall to be full. The hall contained about 1,000 people. And so with all my units and local people, etc., we managed to fill about 700. But then got the Jawans in, a couple of battalions to fill up the remaining seats. We sent word to the 2-3 hotels in Gangtok. Some American tourists and other people also came to hear the talk. So I introduced him to the audience, and I said, this is Bull Kamar. He belongs to my elder brother's battalion. He's a great mountaineer. He's the first man who discovered Siachen Glacier. And he made a post at 18,000 feet on Siachen Glacier called the Kumar Post, which is named after him. He was the boss of the high altitude warfare school in Gulmarg. He to train people on snow climbing, climbing high mountains, skiing, all that nonsense. He's an adventure man. I also told them that he belonged to the famous Everesters, the people who climb mountains, who are known as the toeless club, that means don't have toes. So he gave his talk, and after finishing his talk about how they conquered Kanchenjunga, one of the American ladies got up and she said, "But Colonel, I heard the general introduce you to say that you've got no toes." He says, "That's right, man." He said, "How can you climb mountains without toes?" He said, "Lady, the toes have only one purpose in life, for ladies to paint the nails red or green or blue, especially if you're wearing sandals. Otherwise, you can do without them. You can have a shoe which is smaller in size." He said, "Once the toe gets gangrene, you cut them off when you have a smaller size boot, and that's it." He climbed all these mountains without any toes. Just to tell you how the mountaineering is done. Now, my mother-in-law came up, Shruti's mother. She's a doctor, and her name is Sabhadra Barkatram. She belongs to a Bari family. And her younger daughter, that's the little sister out of the three sisters, I married the eldest, Preeti, who's also a doctor. She rang me up and she said, "Look, mother wants to visit you, and it's all right to stay in Gangtok, but she's a heart case, and so therefore shouldn't take her to the high altitude area." I said, "All right." So she came. Now I looked at her, she's perfectly fine, she's having her medicines and she's walking around well. So I told her, "Mother, if you have to die, you'll die. Nobody can stop it. But if you haven't seen the great mountains, it's not worth dying. How can you leave this world without seeing the beauties of the Lord Shiva himself?" She said, "All right, what do you want?" I said, "I'll take you up to Changu Lake, where the Chogyal, the elder son, drowned. I'll take you up to Changu Lake, at least to see the beauty of these mountains. And that lake is crystal clear. You can't drink the water. So you have a huge Emi mountain on the other side, full of snow. And the reflection you see in the water, you can't see where the water lies. As far as you're concerned, the mountain goes up there, up to about 16,000 feet or about 15,000 feet. And it goes down into the reflection in the water. Another 15,000 feet. When you look down, you can't see. You think it's all one. You can't see the line of the water. You say, "All right, I'll come." So I had an oxygen cylinder and a doctor accompanying us, and we drove her up to Changu Lake, spent some time, give her a hot coffee and all that. She really thoroughly enjoyed it and very grateful that I had taken her up there. I felt that the ladies who want to see these areas must be permitted to do so. But when I had taken over the division, I was clearly told that this is an operational area. We've got our pickets this side, and the Chinese have got pickets on the other side. It could be a war one of these days. Therefore, civilians must not be permitted. So I said, "Look, I don't agree with this. The point at issue is people all over this country are paying their taxes. And the army is, because of these taxes, paid for its work and its equipment and its weapons. So surely the taxpayer of this country has full right to know as to how we defend our borders. So what's the problem?" They say, "Oh, it's a secret area." I said, "What's the secret? The Chinese are looking at us all the time. We're looking at them all the time. There's nothing secret there. Isn't it?" So I spoke to the governor. The governor had some guests with him. His son had come, a very handsome man, and his wife, a very beautiful girl. And so I took them up at the governor's request to show them all this. They're very happy to see this place. And then I permitted ladies of the division from Gangtok and from Singapore to come and see. I got a few raps on the knuckle to say that you're bringing the ladies there. I said, "Yes, I'm sorry.